observant person, so you should turn your workout off because you're skewing your data. On your watch, your workout's still running. Yeah, you see it.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
This is part of his workout.
It might be.
Yeah.
I don't want to skew your data. I know you rode your bike here.
No, I did not.
You want some coffee?
Nope. Too late. I got water.
All right.
Fine, thanks.
All right, I think we're ready now.
Gee whiz.
If we weren't ready
Gee
before, we're
whiz.
for sure ready now.
All right,
All right.
we're ready, I think. More or less. This is Fixed on Jesus. Hey everybody, welcome to the Fixed on Jesus podcast. This is our, it's our attempt to serve the people at Center Church. Sometimes we know where we're going, sometimes we don't, but this is the Fixed on Jesus podcast where we sit and talk about things that affect those of us here at Center Church in Gilbert, Arizona. So my name is Rich, and across the table from me is Mark Johnson Jr.
Hello, Rich.
How you doing, Mark? And behind the glass, we have Heather Corbitt.
Hey, hey, hey.
And there she is. So we have topics that are prepared. Mark, what are we talking about this morning, this afternoon, whatever day this is? Because I'm trying not to be,
Yeah.
whatever time of day it is. I don't give that time. Just
You don't give out information like
it's
that
evergreen,
anymore.
yeah, right.
Too many people have been just showing up out of the blue.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't want that. Today, so picking up on a topic that we discussed a little bit that ended up being one of our most popular episodes about men and women's roles in the church.
Yeah.
We decided to dig in a little bit more and discuss a little more theologies associated with that. And the idea in Christianity is two ways in which men and women relate, egalitarian and complementarian.
Yes.
Now, I'm not pretending to know what either of those mean, and I definitely can't spell them very well. But I just wanted to throw those out there. And
Are they in the Bible?
no, actually.
Yeah.
They're, to my understanding, they're just concepts that are derived from what we think the Bible
that's right,
teaches.
yeah.
And there's
Yes.
a lot of disagreement too.
There is,
I wanna
yeah. There's a
preface
lot
it
of
with that.
there's a lot of controversy about that too. Yeah. So sometimes the best, not every theological word we use is something found in the Bible, but that doesn't mean that it's illegitimate. So this is an example of that. Egalitarianism and complementarian.
Full disclosure, like what would you say our church?
Complementarian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to define them. But
Yeah, we'll define
We want to
them.
get our biases out
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So egalitarianism is the belief that men and women that they are equal in every way and can and should serve the same in any context.
So in the church, in the home,
Church, home, wherever.
Wherever.
Yeah. Complementarianism believes that men and women are equal in value and dignity, but serve in different complementary ways. That's the name.
So that's the
Complementarianism.
general definition of both.
That's the big overarching definition.
So just to real quick, just on the egalitarian side,
Yeah.
are you saying that men and women are not equal in value, or
No, they believe they're
are
equal
also-
in value and dignity, and also equal in the ability is the wrong word, roles that they should serve.
Okay, just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
So like they would say, like egalitarians would be things like, they would say, women can be elders, women can be pastors, and because there's since there's no difference, and they would say that in their understanding and theology, that's what they'd look to say.
Right. Okay. Is this also something that plays out in a relationship between a man and a woman?
Yeah, I mean, I
marriage?
think usually the way the people who are egalitarian speak of it, they talk about mutual submission, that we're called to mutually submit to one another, and
That's from the scriptures, but it might not necessarily be the right context.
where
1 Corinthians.
really,
Go gadget Google.
yeah. When you say it's in the scriptures, I'd love to know where.
All right.
Heather, do you think it's in the Bible?
Yes, it is.
I have no idea, but I just love that we're doing video so that way this can be seen.
Yeah, exactly.
Ephesians 5:21.
Okay, read it.
Hold on. That takes another
You had to Google. You had to Google it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I didn't even bring a Bible. This is not our good start for a video.
No, it's all right. You bring a Bible in your computer. That's fine.
Yeah. Ephesians 5:21 ESV. Submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ.
Okay, so clearly there has to be some context
Yeah.
to that.
I pulled it
understanding.
in isolation.
Yeah, right. So I'll read beginning in verse 15. Look carefully how then you walk, then how you walk, which is like how you live. Not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart, giving thanks always and for everything to God the Father in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so the idea there is not a setting, not a sort of a destruction of the different roles, but the idea there is we want to walk wise, not foolish. We want to be filled with the Spirit, not filled with wine. So therefore, we want to serve one another out of love and not do those kinds of foolish things.
Yeah.
And then he shifts and does another. Then he shifts and makes shifts topics
Paul?
in verse 22. And if this is Ephesians 5:22, wives submit to your husbands as to the Lord. And so a lot of times what the egalitarians are going to do is say that phrase, submitting to one another out of Christ, is the overarching controlling idea throughout the submission, when that's a part of a whole nother idea.
I see.
That's what they'll do. So
They're right about the verse existing, just not necessarily the context.
yeah. So
the
the
application.
context is right. Yeah, but like what they will say is they'll sort of try to destroy all the differences between men and women in verse 21, and then not read verse 22 in context, right?
Right.
And so I think most of the time the reason that people are egalitarian is not necessarily what the Bible says; it's what they observe in relationship between men and women.
So like culturally or anecdotally.
So it's one thing to say people are equal in value and dignity but serve in different ways. It's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to see people living as husbands and wives out in the real world, right?
Okay.
They live out in the real world and not, you've got problems. Every marriage has problems, every person has problems. And so you see this and, a lot of times, even though this is not the way that we make decisions, this is how we think theologically, we look at people and we look at the way they're living as husband and wife and say, I don't want to do that. And so, like a lot of times egalitarians, what they'll do is they'll say male headship leads to abuse.
I don't even think they would like that word.
What?
Headship.
Well, it's in the Bible.
Right. Oh, I'm not.
I mean,
saying,
I'm not.
I don't
yeah,
like the word.
I mean,
I'm
it's
saying.
silly. It's a silly thing to say. I mean, I agreed, but like male headship, male leadership is it's a biblical idea. But like they're going to say, they're going to point to examples where there are men who, in the name of leadership, abuse that leadership.
Yeah.
And which is horrendous and awful. But that doesn't mean that godly biblical leadership doesn't exist. Right. And so that's what they'll try to do. And let's just be real. I mean, there's a reality that there's men out there who lead, who in the name of leadership are overbearing and heavy-handed. That's not leadership. That's not biblical leadership.
Well, that was going to lead into I was going to ask about the misuses of male headship.
So think about so it's interesting when Paul says in verse 22, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. And so then it says, for husbands is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. And so the idea there is, wives, like this is your call. You need to submit and we'll talk about what submission means in a minute.
Yeah.
But that's the
Be
idea.
good to define that.
Yeah. Then here's the nature of the leadership that husbands are to exude toward their wives. In verse
Ephesians
25.
5:25. Yeah.
Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So leadership for the like if you were to describe what leadership in the home is to be for a husband, it's to be the chief servant and the one who loves his wife above anyone else in the world, right? And so like the way Jesus serves us, right? Because there's a connection there. He makes a connection. Love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, right? So the way that he shows his love for the church is by his sacrifice, right? Same thing with us, right? And that doesn't mean that whatever the wife wants, the husband just says, okay, I'll sacrifice. No, it's the same thing with us as Christians, right? As Christians, Jesus doesn't just give us whatever we want, right?
Yeah.
Jesus has sacrificially given us the most important thing, which is our redemption. He's purchased us back from the dead. He's given us the gift of his own life so that we might have life in him.
Right.
That doesn't mean we have the freedom to just do whatever we want or run over him or just say, hey, I'm going to follow whatever course of life I want and I'm going to, ask forgiveness later. That's not the idea. That means, that's not the truth. Same thing's true here. So I've heard some men sometimes say things like, well, if it's just serve your wife, then whatever your wife says goes. No, not necessarily, right? It's so like that's where it's what we need to recognize is to serve your wife sometimes might mean disagreeing kindly, graciously. Sometimes might mean setting a course that is going to take some work to get on the same page about. But all the while, it's always bathed in a
blanket of love,
in a context of love and service and sacrifice.
Yeah.
Right.
I do have some questions about that.
Yeah, go for it.
In terms of what loving and submission and how they go together. But first, I've heard another argument for the egalitarian position from that scripture that you read. So in Ephesians 5, it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. They would say that their argument would be, yes, scripture is commanding a husband to love their wives, but we also know that wives are to love their husbands. So therefore, when Paul only writes one of those things, we still know that there's both sides of that. And they would apply that to, well, they're telling wives to submit to their husbands, but husbands should also submit to their wives. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. But
I'm just saying their argument.
It's a horrible argument because, like,
I'm pushing back a little as an unmarried man.
No. I mean, it's fine. I mean, like if you think about what it comes natural. A wife wants to be led and loved by her husband, right? And so that's natural. So
Heather's shaking her head, but the camera can't see. So.
What we got here is Paul speaking to the nature of husbands and wives.
So,
right? So like a husband needs to be reminded to serve his wife
and to love her,
and that's what love looks like.
Yeah,
a wife does not need to be reminded to love her husband.
So he's going at our weaknesses.
What does she need to be reminded of? To follow. And you know why? Because that goes all the way back to the garden. Because at the garden, like since the garden, the wife's temptation is to usurp, and so. That's what Paul's doing, and he roots all this in the garden, right? He roots all this in a pre-fall setting and condition, right? Because these roles that were given that he's talking about are not roles that were instituted after the fall. It's before the fall, right? And so what Paul is communicating here to husbands and wives is he's correcting a natural inclination. A husband's natural inclination is to serve himself and not serve his wife. And so what Paul's reminding is, no, guys, you need to serve your wives and love them and sacrifice for them. A wife's natural inclination is to take authority, right? And to usurp her husband's authority in the home. And Paul's saying, hey, no, guys, ladies, what you need to remember is that you're called to submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And so that's rooted in the effect that the fall has had on men and women, right?
Right.
I mean that's as obvious. That's obvious in every marriage, right? And so I mean, and I recognize that this is super countercultural, and there's a lot of people who throw rocks at me just for saying this kind of stuff. But this is what the Bible says here.
Yeah. No, in general, it reminded me, and this time I came prepared with the scripture. 1 Timothy 2:13, Paul talks about, well, actually we could start in 11. 1 Timothy 2:11.
Now here he's talking about why a woman doesn't teach or have authority over a man.
Right.
And so how does he root this?
In the garden.
Right.
Same way. That's what made me think of it.
Yeah,
but.
he roots it in the garden, but that's a little different. That's more in the conversation of a church, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So he's saying a woman shouldn't teach or have authority over a man. Why? Because it's outside the role of what God's given her from the garden, right?
Right.
And so the same thing here, the husband, so you'll notice that the actions of the wife and the husband are both rooted in the action of Christ, right?
Yeah.
Wives, submit to your husband. How? As to the Lord. How are we supposed to submit to the Lord? In everything, in all things.
Yeah.
Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. How are you to love your wife? As Christ loved the church. How did Christ love the church?
Laid down his life for
He
her.
laid down his
for her.
life, right? And so, like, this is gospel application that we can do on a daily basis,
Yeah.
hourly basis, that we must do as a matter of course to, as Christians, reflect the reality of the gospel. And so it's you just recognize that. And then he even roots it further down in verse 31 of Ephesians 5. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That's right. That's in Genesis chapter 2 right there.
Yeah.
And so you've got all of this happens pre-fall. And so this is why I think the egalitarian position is a cultural, it's something that's popular culturally, but it's not anywhere near biblical.
Okay. I have a handful of questions.
Yeah, sure.
First one, and this again coming from a soon-to-be married man that's trying to stumble through and not screw this up and try to do this well and try to understand it. I'm commanded to love my wife the way Christ loves the church, and my wife's called to follow me. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Summarizing.
Yeah.
Are they mutually exclusive? Is my obedience before the Lord just loving my wife, even if she doesn't follow me? And is her obedience to follow me, even if I'm not loving her well?
Well, I think those are two separate questions,
Okay.
right? So, like, I mean, there's we can think about Paul talking to women who have husbands that are not Christians, and he says, "Love them and don't leave them unless they leave you," right? And you might be able to sort of win them to the Lord.
Yeah.
And then
Evangelidating, or what do you like?
no, that's
because they're already married.
they're already married.
So one of them got saved while they were married.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
kind of
We don't believe in missionary dating.
Okay.
And so, so I think what everybody has a problem with is the idea of submission,
Not the loving.
not the loving. I mean, nobody has a problem. I mean, everybody.
I got a problem with it.
Well, but I mean, everybody says, yeah. Nobody ever says, I don't want to love my wife like that.
Right.
You know, I think guys are apt to say, I'd take a bullet for her. But what they're not willing to do is pick up their cross daily and lay aside their preferences daily, right? It's much harder to die a death of doing the dishes or putting the kids to bed or doing tasks or having a conversation they don't want to have. That feels much more like death than taking a bullet.
Yeah.
Because any guy I know would take a bullet. But it's the 1,001 different choices that we have to make on a weekly basis that shows the love that we are to have for our wives. But I think the challenge is submission, right? I think sometimes people think that leadership means the guy comes up with all the ideas and the woman just goes, okay, that's what we're going to do. That's not submission.
Right. Okay.
That's not submission. That's like being a doormat and just having your husband's not your commander.
Right.
He's not your commanding officer.
I'm glad you distinguished that. Yeah.
Your husband is the one who loves you. So like the things that he's bringing up are things that you should be able to look at and say, oh, I can see how this is a step of loving leadership. Right. And if it's not, if it's born of selfishness, the wife's duty is to say, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's right. I don't think we should do that. Or we should get help with this, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that I think husbands and wives should always recognize is that at the drop of a hat, both of them should be able to go get help, right? From someone else that they trust.
Right.
Because a husband should never say, hey, I have the leadership card, you need to submit to me. Right? I mean, like that's just not how it works.
Right. It's also just not helpful or loving.
It's not helpful. I mean, it's like if we're making a big decision, I want to be on the same page with my wife.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not going to demand that she just follows, because that's not sacrificial leadership. So for example,
I was going to, go ahead.
So like think about some big decisions that I think the husbands and wives need to be together on. Think about things like moving, big purchases, job changes, like whether or not to have more kids.
Kids or more kids.
All those things, kids or more kids. Well, I think people should have kids, but kids
Amen.
or more
Amen.
kids. So like those kinds of things are like those things that a husband doesn't, I don't believe the husband has the right to say, I'm making the decision on that, you need to fall in line. No, that's a couple's decision that you make together. Like, okay, a husband just doesn't go, okay, we're moving. Like, hey, this is what I think we should do. Let's pray about this together, right? That's very different. And so from my perspective, those kinds of decisions, and I think this is biblical sacrificial leadership, I think that the kinds of decisions, those kinds of big decisions, a loving, kind husband is going to try to lead in such a way so that him and his wife can be on the same page. Amen. And if he doesn't listen to things that she says and maybe course correct a lot, then that's not leadership.
Well, that's the gift of a wife, I think. Just one of the many gifts, but that she will balance out your tendency to do something.
Yeah, and vice versa, right? Yeah. And I think also, like in the name of submission, I've heard a story, not somebody who goes to our church, but I know a woman who needs a back surgery, and her husband won't let her do it, and she wants to do it, and it's her own back. I don't think someone should submit in that way, right? I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Nor do I think women are not children where they need to report every hour on the hour what they're doing.
Right.
Right. Like that's just not.
Yeah.
That's not submission. And so I think every couple is different, right? And so on the one hand, husbands must not be overbearing and controlling.
Yeah.
On the one hand, and on the other hand, they must not be checked out and go whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the women must not be doormats where they offer no opinions. Neither should they be usurpers where they take the reins and just go forward.
Right.
Right. And so I remember one time I had a friend years ago. He said to me that his wife has never offered correction to him in his marriage.
That doesn't sound very healthy.
No. And I was like, oh my gosh. I told my wife and I was like, could you be a little more like that? Yeah, she didn't laugh.
She didn't laugh like that.
No, but it was I mean, like,
I hope she's not watching this right now.
She
probably isn't.
I don't know. She's not one of our legion of fans.
No.
But anyway, then I switched to seriously though. I'm grateful that she has the God-given right and responsibility to correct me and because she knows me best, for her to be able to step in and say, hey, I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
You're not listening. You need to go talk to someone or whatever, right? That's a gift, and vice versa, right?
Right.
And so, I think that's where so much of the husband and wife relational challenges are things that are just wisdom. Right?
Yeah.
We need to work through together and in community.
Yeah.
What's normal, what's not. I remember one story, I knew a guy, not at our church, but a guy who
You don't tell any stories about people at our church, and we appreciate that.
No, I'm not going to do that. But
I confess something to you, and I might hear it on another episode.
I'm not going to do that. But this guy had a key. He had a key so he had bars on the outside of his house, right?
Yeah.
And he had the only key to those bars. And he would lock it up and not give anyone else a key, at night. And so, on the one hand, I mean...
Where does he live? That's the first question.
I'm not going to say. But, that's just... hyper controlling, right?
yeah.
And he also demanded that his wife tell him where she was at every moment.
So that's
of the
before
day.
location services.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's like, goodness gracious. I mean, she's not a child.
Yeah.
And so like those kinds of things are things that are just red flags. And that's where it's helpful to be in community and just to be able to ask each other, is this normal?
Yeah.
Is this
No,
normal?
for sure.
That's not normal. Right.
Thanks for teasing that out with the categories. I have at least 2 more questions, and I know we're going kind of long. The first one is, and you touched on this a little bit, I think it would be helpful to tease out what would happen if there was a stalemate.
Yeah.
So you did say go to others. Like, can you just tease out maybe what that process, and I know it's not going to look the same for everyone, but let's say husband and wife are lovingly disagreeing on one of those big decisions.
Yeah.
And they're kind of at a stalemate. Can you walk us through maybe a rough idea of how that should or could play out? And of course, there's a lot of nuances.
Yeah, sure. I think one way is just like you get to a stalemate and you just say, hey, listen, let's take a few days and pray about it. Right? And step away and stop talking about it. Because like if you always talk about it, it's this loggerheads where you're always slamming, and that's not helpful.
Yeah.
And so you step away and you pray about it, right? And so you come back, and let's say you're still on opposite pages. I think it's just wise to sit and talk with someone you trust. And this doesn't have to be a pastor. It can just be a wise friend who has perspective that's outside. It's sometimes just an outside perspective who's not involved.
Yeah.
Super helpful, right? Just to lay both sides out and just say, hey, what are we missing?
Like together?
Yeah,
Like
together.
couples?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are we missing? And just, I mean, this is where it just takes humility to be able to just lay this out and say, I could be missing something. Help us here. So,
Yeah.
and it's the same, like, it's the same kind of thing, I think, when, like there's stalemates, but there's also like recurring arguments couples have.
Yeah.
And if there's an argument that comes up 2, 3, 4,
The same
5,
topic.
yeah, you need to get help.
Yeah.
We all need help like that, right? It's a normal thing in
Yeah.
a marriage to need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
so,
that's good.
And that normal thing, that marriage, that kind of help is natural and necessary, and we all need that help. That's part of the reason we have small groups where we can just get together and community say, hey, this is something we're running up against, and guaranteed other people have had the same challenge.
And it's the blessing and the means of grace of a community that I'm already experiencing.
Oh, for sure.
So one more, we talked about submission. My question that came up in my mind was, what's the difference between submission and agreement? Or is there a difference?
Well, I mean, again, I think that the words mean something different.
Right.
Someone to submit is go, okay, I'll do what you say. I'll defer.
Yeah.
Right. Agreement means, yeah, this is great. Let's go. But like, I think there are, so like when in the context of a marriage, it's one thing to decide what's for dinner, and one person go, okay, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter, you decide, but like I think there's a very short list, and I'm being hard pressed to think about like what it would be, where a husband demands submission on a decision that the wife is wildly against. Now, separate, I'm not talking about sin, I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, but like that's where I think we have to be real careful. Small things, there may be small things in the marriage, small things about someone or small decisions that a husband goes, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I can defer. Or a wife goes, that's fine. I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
defer. Like that happens all the time.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Heather's got something.
I do. I have a personal experience. Can I share?
Yeah.
So several years ago, Greg and I, my husband, we had attended.
Shout out to Greg.
Shout out to Greg. We had attended a marriage conference where one of the questions that was asked of both of us was, what's one thing that your spouse can do that would bring you the most joy right now? Like where you're struggling or whatever. He had asked that and for some of our listeners, this may be like a ridiculous thing, but
Not for Triple G.
not for Triple G, that I go to bed at the same time that he goes to bed. I am a night owl by nature, so I would stay up late. And anyone who knows Greg, he's a garbage man and has been for a long time. And he wakes up incredibly early.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like ships in the night passing,
Yeah.
right?
You weren't together. Yeah.
So I prayed about this because to me, this was like serious sacrifice.
Sure.
Okay.
You were like offended almost.
Not offended, but definitely like, you've got to be kidding me.
a big ask.
Like,
Yeah.
that is a big ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I made it's even hard to say it. I sacrificed going to bed much earlier, and it was very hard. But I've since switched. I'm now I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a morning person, but I definitely get up with him in the morning, and I go to bed with him at night. And it has tremendously changed our marriage.
Yeah.
Just that one act of sacrifice. So when you talk about submission, it's not. A lot of times people go straight to, well, he's going to tell me what to do, and I just have to do it. And it can be something as simple as I don't get to do that preference thing that I prefer to do. And in this case, it was, it's hard for me to sleep at night. So for me to be in bed when he goes to bed is a sacrifice,
right.
but it's what I'm willing to do
Yeah.
for my husband.
And that's a good example.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
I don't think Greg would never say, hey,
Triple G.
you must go to bed at the same time as me, and I demand it. Like that's not how that works.
Yeah.
No, there was no demand in that. It was a
Right.
request, and it was a request from a marriage, from marriage.
Open-handed requests too, right?
For sure.
Well, I think,
for sure.
yeah, if you think about if Jesus is the pattern for our leadership, how many things does he demand? Like what he calls us to follow him, and the reason we follow him, and the reason it's easy to follow him, is because we know he loves us, and then we recognize that wherever there's love, trust follows easily.
Yeah.
And so I've never had a thought, like when I read the Gospels and see something Jesus says, man, what does he really want? What's
No
his,
ulterior motive.
yeah, what's his ulterior? What's he really after here?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he loves me, so I can trust him completely. And that's the idea. That's what leadership should engender. Godly, biblical leadership from a complementarian perspective.
Oh, that's great. I don't think I have any more. I'm sure there's more questions.
I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from our Legion of fans, correct, Heather?
You know what? Especially because it's now video.
Oh.
I've got to mention this because if you're listening, like you have been for the last 100 episodes, this one is on video. So if you head over to YouTube, you can actually also watch it on Spotify now.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is our channel on YouTube, Heather?
Center Church.
Okay, we have
Real hard to find because there's only one Center Church in
No, there's-
all the land.
There's
but
another.
There's a lot of Center Church.
We're not going to talk about them.
Yeah.
Center Church, Gilbert,
All right, Center
Arizona.
Church Gilbert. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning
Link
in.
description.
If you have any questions about this, feel free to email us at production@centergilbert.com. Thanks for joining us for our first video episode. And yeah, we love you.
See you next time.